Are you totally different when it comes to sex and copulation? Have you judged yourself out of receiving pleasure? Have you judged yourself into receiving pleasure in certain ways and excluded other ways? Would you like to know more about what else is possible with bodies? Would you like to create confidence in the bedroom and beyond? How has your sex life or lack of it affected other areas of your life? Everyone has the potency to be a sexual superhero. Get ready to listen, sense, and play with the sexualness that is you. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, pleasure diva and body whisperer, Milica Jelenic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Pleasure Zone. I'm your host, Milica Jelenic, and this is episode 200. So it's pretty exciting. And, I actually don't have an official topic for tonight. I was just like, episode 200. What's that going to be like? Wonder what I'm going to talk about. And a lot of it is I want to talk about just saying thank you so much for being listeners and being, around. So interesting. So I'm getting some notes in the chat that there's some cool. So I'm hoping you guys can hear me. And I'm just going to figure out what's going on for a second. And sorry about this, guys. So just give me a sec here. So, okay, I hope that this is going to shift and change the sound of the echo. I'm in a new spot that I've never actually done my show from before. And so if you are hearing funny sounds, I apologize for that. It will change in a few minutes. So, good times. What a great way to start off episode number 200. Actually, on my very first episode, I also did it from Toronto, from the same friend where I'm doing it out of her bedroom right now. I was doing it from her salon. So it's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting that, I can do my show from anywhere in the world and with so many people. And as a look back, I've actually done my show from a lot of different places. Did it from a cottage. I've done it from different places around Ontario, and I did it out of Vancouver a couple of times as well. So what's one of the most wonderful things about having an online podcast is you can literally do it from anywhere, and with anyone. So I can say that I have had about probably over 70 or 80 guests on my show, and some of them have been some of the most inspirational people that I've ever actually spoken to in my whole life, which has been awesome. And I've also had a number of guests who their insights and their ideas have both inspired me, they've inspired other people, and there has been I've actually gotten letters about people enjoying my guests so much. I've had requests for some guests to be repeated. And one of my listeners' favorite guests was actually Melanie Clampett. And she hasn't been on for a while. She hasn't been on for about 2 years. But Melanie was on at least 3 or 4 times on my show with a variety of topics. And she was actually my second guest on my show. And she was, the topic with her was receiving more in sex and life. And then she was on again just shortly after. We had some more, and she did a show called The Big Ask in around, when was that? Let me just check. The Big Ask was in October of 2014, which was pretty amazing because there was stuff she brought up in that show, The Big Ask, that sticks with me till today. And we talked about how much I remember talking to her about, when you're willing to ask for your big ask, how much that can actually change for your whole life. And I remember talking to her about, what is a big ask? And it could be anything, it could be from simple things like maybe your big ask would be that you want somebody to have a threesome, but you've been so scared your whole life to ask for it that you never did. But when you actually do, and you have the courage and the willingness to both have somebody say no to you or somebody say yes to you, can be life-changing. So Melanie Clampett and her big ask actually contributed to so many other call series that I've done after that. So many other things where I realized that the big ask is something that's actually stopping so many of us from actually having the life that we would like to have. And it's funny because, your big ask can be something that is, for example, it could be a sexual big ask. But when you ask for it, and it is received or it isn't judged even, then your whole life, it's just like everything that you were afraid to be judged for or that you've been holding on so tight just opens your world up. So that show was an awesome show. It was one of my favorites, and I do reference it a lot. It was a really great start to the shows. It was really funny too, and I mentioned on one of my Facebook Lives that being the first like month of my shows, I was so intimidated. I was so intimidated that I thought I would never have enough content to actually go on for more than like 2 months. I was like, maybe I can come up with 8 shows. I did one about blowjobs. I did one about sex and aging. I had a guest. My very first guest was Lee Hurst, who is an expert in sex and aging. And she is amazing. She, even though she doesn't come from the same line of training that I do, she came from this place of no judgment that was just so beautiful. She had such an interesting life too, and she was my first guest, and I'm so grateful for her willingness to be on, her willingness to share her story, just totally, frankly, openly, and honestly. And it was also a real eye opener that I hadn't really thought about. That you can be an expert in such niche fields. And after having her on with her niche topic, it actually had me go into exploring so many other interesting niche topics. So she was my second show, and I was like, well, sex and aging, what else do I talk about? There's got to be something else, something interesting. And it's really funny because quite frankly, I live a pretty vanilla sex life compared to the things I talk about. I'm just aware of them, and I don't judge them. That's the one thing. But my sex life in general is very average and normal, and like what 2 average normal people would do. So I think, maybe not, maybe I'm extreme. I'll have to ask my lover husband if he thinks my requests are extreme, but I'm pretty sure they're pretty vanilla. So it's I'm not coming home in gimp suits or anything. I had to do a gimp suit reference for my friend Dennis because he loves when I do gimp suit references, and he is official call out to Dennis for being the #1 listener of all time. He has actually listened to every single of my 200 episodes, including the lost episode with Alex May. And I want to thank actually Keisha Clark for listening in live tonight. She was the producer of that show with the patience of, I don't even know. They say the patience of Job, but I think she actually had patience beyond Job on that episode. It was extreme. It was illegal, I think. I think everything about that episode was full on and completely illegal to actually be posted in most countries around the world. So that show, if you missed it, you missed it for good. That show has been, I don't know if it's still available in the archives. I don't know if it's actually been completely removed. But it was a show with Alex May, and it doesn't go on repeat. So you guys won't be hearing it being played on Inspired Choices Network. You might have to you might have to pay me some extra cash to listen to it. And it was a full-on swearing show. Yeah, it was pretty hardcore. I think at some point, too, we even had a game of how many swear words could we come up with in the entire alphabet. It was a random roller coaster ride that by far was my most. It definitely won for the most swearing. So, if I'm going to give people awards, that one won for the most swear words that I could say possibly shared collectively as a duo in the interview, most swear words that could actually be said in a full hour. It was hardcore. So, Alex May, if you are listening, you are the winner of the award of most swearing on the Pleasure Zone. And I say I could give out some other awards too, like person who's been on my show the most as a guest, and I think I have 3 that I could actually give that title to. So Melanie Clampett's definitely up there as most number of guest appearances. Max Riggs also comes in at most number of guest appearances, and my friend Jonathan, who doesn't like to be named by his last name at times, has not only been like the most number of times probably, he's been like a spontaneous guest who doesn't always get announced as a guest, but certainly shows up and has always been a contributor to the shows, and definitely, he's like a caveman. He contributed to so many episode ideas, actually did research for me, which was so cool. And that was really cool. So those are probably my most number of guests, along with some of my most extreme episodes. And I mention these things so that you guys can look back in the amazing archives, not just of my show, but of other people's shows too, because some of these guests have been on other people's shows as well. So you'll get takes on their, whatever their topics were on my show, but you're also going to get takes on all kinds of stuff from other people's episodes. So many different topics, so many different angles to approach life in general from. So super fun. And yeah, there's been a few others that have been really random. Like one of my favorites, and I don't remember who produced this, but it might have been Keisha as well. Keisha's produced many of my shows, so total shout out to Keisha. Not only that, Keisha was one of my number 1 fans in the beginning, and quite frankly, between her and Dennis, Keisha's showing up in the chat room all the time, and Dennis constantly listening to and giving me feedback to my shows definitely kept me going and kept me inspired to keep choosing it. So it's been like an amazing ride. And, there's been, I think there's also been a few other listeners that I've had. I have a listener, Mike, who's from Reno. He called in a few times. He's had bravery and called in. And he's been awesome too with notes and letters of gratitude, even phone calls. I got a few phone calls from my listener not on the radio. I actually got phone calls direct on my line, just to my home, to say, hey, I've been listening to your show. I was like, wow, wild. I have to say that I love somebody who's got the guts to actually just call and go, hey, I want to talk to you. I listened to your show. Emails, letters. I've had some of the most incredible email responses to my shows as well. I'll share some of those with you, though, after the break. But, just looking back, I'm wondering for the listeners who are listening, if you want to join in the chat room or if you want to call in, I hear that tonight you might actually be able to hear the show better if you do call in. But if you can hear it, that's awesome. If you're having a hard time hearing it, definitely call in. The numbers are on the site. So 1-815-880-8255 in the U.S., 1-613-800-8736 in Canada. So you can call in and you can actually let me know, what did you enjoy? What were some episodes that you busted a gut out laughing at, learned something new, totally got turned on? What were some of your favorite episodes? And I do have quite a few more favorite episodes that I've had that I will mention, because there are some episodes that I reference a lot. So we'll definitely be bringing those up for you guys so that you can know about them for sure. And especially if you're a new listener and you weren't listening from the beginning, you might not even be aware of how many episodes are in the background of this, of all the archive. So many. So it's very, very fun. So I want to thank you guys. I just want to remind you that you're listening to actually the Pleasure Zone on Inspired Choices Network. And I want to thank you for either being a new listener or a loyal listener. I'm so grateful. And we're actually going to return after this commercial break and talk more about episode 200, a little bit of a celebration here on Inspired Choices Network.
Many of us have created a lot of limitations around sex and what we are willing to choose. What else is possible beyond what we have already seen, heard, or thought of? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual revolution, taking the taboo out of all aspects of sex, sexuality, and copulation by tuning in to the Pleasure Zone radio show with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. You'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, please call in the U.S. Call 815-880-8255. That's TALK. Or Canada 613-800-8736. Or you can Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email at milicajelenic.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back to the Pleasure Zone, everybody. This is episode 200. Pretty wacky, pretty crazy. The most beautiful thing about episode 200 is that if you've missed every single other episode, you haven't missed them. They're in the archives. And the fact that they're in the archives is freaking incredible to me because, you know, there's a lot of other stations in the world that, you know, you might have your show, but your show doesn't stay in the archives for that long. You know, there might be time limits or something. So I'm super grateful for Inspired Choices Network having super easy accessibility to all of the archives at any time you want. You can just jump in there and get it. And we're on like 50 other platforms like iTunes and, you know, we're on YouTube and like SoundCloud. I don't know, just it goes on and on and on. The list is huge. And Spreaker and it's just growing from there. So for me, this is like one of the most exciting times to be on radio as I like totally get how much it's growing. And I'm just like so curious about what the next, you know, even next episode will be, or the next 100 or the next 200. I have no idea. But the fact that I made it past the first few months gave me a lot of confidence to keep going. The fact that I had my avid chat room playmate Keisha and my avid listener Dennis definitely kept me going. And there are probably other people who listen to many shows, but I just didn't hear from you, so I don't know. So I can't do shout-outs to you, even though I'm going to do an energetic shout-out to everybody who's ever listened to anything or is listening now or has listened in the future. So freaking grateful. You know, whenever you do anything, whether it's on social media or, you know, you've created a video or you've done something on like YouTube or whatever, it's always nice that if you're actually putting something out in the world, it's nice to be seen and heard. And, you know, sometimes getting the feedback really is for me like that I know, wow, I'm being seen, being heard. Cool. Even sometimes, you know, I've gotten reports that I should probably be arrested for what I'm saying. And that one particular person, I can't remember his name, which is fine, probably actually did me a great favor. And even at the time I was aware of it because it was so funny. He was putting links to my show all over the place, telling people that I'm a terrible mom and should probably have my child taken away from me for discussing anything of a sexual nature with her. So, yeah, he kind of, and Keisha's in the chat room saying, I remember him too. Yeah, he was a character. So I want to thank him too, because he actually did contribute to putting word out to my show, and he actually contributed to people listening. So even when you think you're ripping me apart, but you're actually putting it out there in the world, thank you so much. I mean, if you're just going to rip me apart and you just have fun doing that, I'll still receive it. Still receive it from you, my friends, because it doesn't really matter. So I wanted to talk about a few other of my favorites. And I know if you guys do listen to this show a lot, you've probably heard me reference one of my very favorite shows. And this was actually from September 8th, 2014, called Fun for One. Absolutely one of my all-time favorite shows. And if you have never listened to it, you know, is now the time, because it was kind of like a guided masturbation. Who does that? Well, I did. I did it online. And my producer, Christine, says, best show ever. It was a great show. Actually, a friend of mine was listening to that show, and she said that in the middle of the night, it woke her up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and she could hear my voice in her head guiding her through the guided masturbation. I'm just so glad. I'm just so glad that I could wake somebody up in the middle of the night with my voice and have their body so determined to have more pleasure that they wake up and they just go for it. They take it to heart, and they actually go through all of the exercise. And it was literally like a 1-hour show where I walked you through loving your body and get rid of your points of view about smells, taste, touch, sounds that your body makes, how your body looks. Basically went through all of your senses from head to toe, full on, super intense. And it was really like, it is actually a product line, right, Keisha? It is actually a product line that I use in a lot of my classes. So if you've never signed up for any of my classes, you'll find that I do actually bring the guided masturbation into most of my classes, like sexual magicism. I became aware after that show of how much we actually shut down our senses and we shut down receiving ourselves, which is really crazy. It was such an amazing show for me, because I realized how many points of view I had about my own body, about my own self, and I could actually shift that. I could just become aware of it and choose to see it different and flip it around and do something different with it. It was so fun and so easy. And for any of you who have never listened to anything else, I highly recommend that. So you can go on Inspired Choices Network and you can actually word search Fun for One, or you can just go to my archives and search the date for September 8th, 2014. So September 8th, 2014 was the day of Fun for One. And I actually did that episode out of a beautiful cottage out in Ontario by Lake Erie. And I was looking out this beautiful window and the sun was setting. Like, it was such a beautiful setting to actually have that show. And there was so much space and so much ease. And it was such like a lovely weekend, getaway for me. I had so much fun, and I got to do my show live from vacation. Really, it's just the coolest. So if you're like, I'm just have such a busy life, I could never have a radio show, you can do your show from anywhere. I know that, I don't know who I was channeling in that 5 seconds, but I was channeling somebody with, like, I think a throat infection. So if you caught the channeling, you knew that was a person with a throat infection. Some of my other fun ones were actually shows inspired by my daughter, who would ask me random questions. there's one that I talk about. The topic was called, "What's that gooey thing?" As my daughter one day, I think she was about 6 or 7 at the time. She was 6 because the show was in 2014, I think, or 2015. And she said, like men's bodies, like, what's that gooey thing between their legs? Just freaking loved her question. So I had to explore them. Naturally, you got to explore a question like, what's that gooey thing? How could you not? It was actually November 3rd, 2014. That was fun. Then I had another show that was actually inspired by a cousin of mine, who at the time was still a virgin, and a few of my cousins had gathered together, and we realized that this girl's beautiful, and we could probably convince her to sell her virginity online, because people at the time, there was somebody, I think it was on some social media site or something where Kijiji, I think, somebody was selling their virginity online. My cousin's a hottie, and she's got this incredible rack. And at the time, I was like, wow, we could get some, we could kind of pimp her out for some serious cash. So that show, The Value of Virginity, was actually inspired by my cousin. And I don't know if she's listening, but she does know enough English to know that if I was saying that, she'll know who she was. And for anybody else in the family who's listening, she's no longer a virgin. All right. But I don't think anybody's listening. So I'm good. Maybe one of my cousins is listening to that, but she'll be laughing right now thinking, oh man, you just outed the cousin. But I didn't name names, so we're all good. And so another one that actually got me one of my sweetest email responses from somebody I've never met in my life. I had a show called Golden Showers Bring May Flowers on April 27th, 2015. And after I did that show, it was about 48 hours after it aired, I received one of the sweetest letters of all time. It was actually from a listener who listened to the show, and they thanked me for talking about the kink of golden showers. And they thanked me because in their life, one of the things that was their greatest kink and their greatest thing was that they like to receive, what they like to do is they like to be gifted flowers. It was a man. He liked to be gifted flowers, and then he liked to feel so overwhelmed and happy by it that his body would just release pee, and he would actually pee on himself. And what he loved about that was most women would go, oh, that's the sweetest. Oh, look at you. You're so sweet. He loved the response to actually peeing on himself, which was actually one of the sweetest, most vulnerable letters I'd ever received from anybody ever. And I wrote back to him, and he was just so grateful that I responded. He's like, I can't believe you responded to me. And I was like, wow, I'm amazed that you had the vulnerability to write to me about this. It's such an unusual kink, and it's such a specific kink with golden showers that it's one that I'd never actually read about. I've heard about being urinated on, or urinating on others, or, drinking urine or having urine on you in different ways. But that one was so unique that it was all about the comfort of actually urinating on yourself. Was one of the sweetest letters I ever got. So from somebody I've never met in my whole life, and I've actually never heard from again. So whatever that show did, I hope it truly inspired them, and I hope they're still listening to the show too. And if you are, there's a shout out to you, and I'm so grateful for you. It was also one of those times where I was like, what am I doing this show for? I don't have any. Is anybody even listening? Is there anything that am I actually creating anything for anybody? So it's been pretty funny. I'm actually having a request, which is kind of fun. I have a request from my producer that she would actually like to come in and ask me questions, and I totally love that. We are going to head to a commercial break, and when we come out of the break, I'll let her come in and interview me for fun, because, hey, why not? She's been a major reason why I'm still on the radio, too. So thank you. I will totally take you up on that offer. And we're actually I'm just going to remind you guys, we are on, I can't even think right now. You're listening to Inspired Choices Network, the Pleasure Zone, and we're actually going to head off to a commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to have some kind of interview. It's going to be fun right after this.
Many of us have created a lot of limitations around sex and what we are willing to choose. What else is possible beyond what we have already seen, heard, or thought of? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual revolution, taking the taboo out of all aspects of sex, sexuality, and copulation by tuning in to the Pleasure Zone radio show with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. You'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
What if there's nothing wrong with you? What if you're far greater than you've ever given yourself credit for? What if it's time to know the gift and the contribution you are to the world and to like yourself a lot more? Hi, my name is Dane here. 13 years ago, I started to truly ask questions. Actually, I started to be the question, and everything changed for me. Asking questions opens doors to infinite possibilities. And it's not about finding the answer. It's about being the question. Always. What I'm inviting you to step into is something that Einstein, Marie Curie, Newton, Da Vinci, Gandhi, Picasso, and Aristotle all knew to be true. What if no question is too big or too small? What if anything is possible for you? What if together we could create a kinder, gentler, happier world? Is now the time? Go to beingyouclass.com and sign up for a free video series, My Gift to You. beingyouclass.com. What if you, truly being you, are the gift and change this world requires? beingyouclass.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, please call in the U.S. Call 815-880-8255. That's TALK. Or Canada 613-800-8736. Or you can Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email at milicajelenic.com. Now back to the program.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pleasure Zone. I'm your host, Milica Jelenic, and guess what? This is episode 200. Crazy. I got some cheering in the background. Actually, one of my live listener cohorts who just like sometimes is my emotional support on shows. She's probably listened live personally in the same room with me more than anybody else ever. Yep, she's been on a lot. She's cheering in the background if you can hear it. So awesome. So yeah, it's very fun. And I've got Christine now. Yay! Christine, you know what, Christine? There's something I actually want to say to you first. Is, you know what? I was invited on somebody's show to be their guest once, and your enthusiasm and I didn't even hardly know you. I'd met you like for 5 minutes. And your enthusiasm and your encouragement and you're seeing something in me that I didn't see in me, I have to say I'm just so grateful for you. Aww. So now I'm going to cry, but you actually saw something in me and you said, you know, you have a talent for this. And I was like, what? No. And you're like, yeah, you do. Yeah. So Keisha was asking, was that the show about fellatio? It was. It was called Fellatio Ratio. And it was with, I was on Cass Thomas's show, yeah. It was crazy.
I remember that show. I think that was the very first show that as the producer / owner, I was sitting here going, oh God, what am I doing? Oh God, am I going to get kicked off? Are they going to shut us down? And then I went, you know what? I don't care. Because the thing about you, Milica, that I heard, was something that your avid listeners will absolutely agree with me. You have so much ease and so much presence with no judgment at all about sex and sexuality and people's choices around one of the most difficult conversational topics ever. You right from that show, I'm like, okay, so I'm going to swear a little bit. I'll be like, oh my God, this bitch is like, she's crazy. And holy shit, she's got something here that's very different. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, is she high? Because you were so relaxed. And then I was like, no, this is who she is. She is so much ease and total presence. Like, the one thing that you do brilliantly is you stay very, very present while being aware of all the bouncing balls at the same time, and you've got no judgment, and you can totally see what's going on with that person. So somebody might be speaking about, I don't know, something, maybe a fantasy they have, right? And instead of them going into giggly, stupid land, because of your presence, they're able to be more present with that conversation, that topic, whatever's going on. So when I heard you, I was like, that is extremely rare and extremely unique. And how you are you're so easy at talking about yourself, and a lot of people would be quote unquote embarrassed. And you're like, well, we all do this. We all got here by having sex. Like, what's the big deal? And then you bring in your lovely, playful, giggly self, and it's just like, this is so fun. I mean, if all the listeners want to know the truth, I really wanted Milica to be on personally for myself, because I love listening to her so much. It's like having my own personal guru on the radio.
That's hilarious.
Sorry. It's so true, though.
I love that just, like, sent you overboard. That's awesome.
I know, because we're like, wow,
oh my God.
Okay, so that's why she just wanted to be selfish. Yeah, I did want to be selfish, but you've been such a massive contribution on the radio. And, when other people would go into a beyond around, I don't know what to talk about, and I don't know what to topic, and you were just always following the energy and asking questions. And it's a muscle that you've developed over time, Milica. And it's a strong muscle. You're able to be so present with it, and while being extremely psychically aware of energies with, like right now, you must be aware of how many listeners, like, I can't even imagine how many listeners are listening to you live right now on this very, very cool show.
It was really weird. Like, normally the show has some listeners. Like, I'm aware of, a couple hundred, maybe a couple thousand. But, yeah, tonight was really interesting because I just feel like, whoa, there's a lot of listening going on, which I'm so grateful for, which is, it's like, I feel a little spun out and high. So, yeah, if I sound a little high tonight, I'm feeling a little high tonight. So I'm like, whoa. But I had to say, too, like, I love that you were saying, like, I want my own personal guru on the show, but some of the stuff that we talk about in, like, private conversations have actually inspired a lot of shows, because I get that, like, you're not the only one with those questions, right? So, like, your questions have contributed to my conversations that have, like, contributed to so many people. I would say there's, like, about 5 of you that have, like, super contributed to topics. And it's just so cool, because there's so many times where I'm like, I don't know what to talk about, but then I know if I talk, if I have a conversation with one of 5 of you, I'm going to get a topic. Somewhere, one of you is going to say something crazy, and I'm going to go, that's a topic.
But that's a cool ability. Sorry to interrupt, but I want to really point to that. That is a very cool ability that you have to tap into listeners. You don't have a point of view around your image. You don't have a point of view around your brand. You are willing to really tap into the listeners and go, what are they looking for? Because, whether you have a vanilla sex life or not, Milica, you have to be aware of what's going on in the world out there to create a show, 200 shows. Like, this is not something that, I know that you're a straight woman in these 10 seconds. And so for you to tap into all other choices that are in the world, you have to be tapping into other people. And so,
Yeah.
you are a host of the listeners. And that's why you've become so successful. And I'm so tickled pink that you're on our network, and I've got to, I swear, I don't know that I've listened to every single show, so I
Pretty
definitely
close.
have, yes, I definitely do not have that award. But, I've listened to so many of your shows, and I've produced so many of them, and every time I think to myself, well, what is she going to talk about tonight? And you blow me away every single time.
I just think it's so fun. Like, it's just so fun even having conversations in the chat room, which is such a unique aspect to this station, that we can have these conversations in the background that actually can change the direction of conversations as well and contribute to them, and it's so cool. And at the beginning, we had a producer and a friend of ours, Carol, who was producing a lot of the shows for me, and I had some of the funniest responses from her. She cracked me up to no end. So Carol, if you are listening, there's a total shout out to you. And every time I would have a topic, I would write it as a topic name. I think there was one about animal sex or something, sexy animals or something like that. And she was like, and then I did talk about animals having sex, and she was like, well, that was totally not where I thought that was going. I think she would write me an email after every show, and she would basically say to me, it was so funny. Because at the time, now we get emails from our producers all the time with insights, information, and all kinds of stuff about our shows. But at the time we weren't getting them yet. But Carol almost every episode would write me an email personally and say, wow, that was really weird. Okay, I'm going to try that. Not sure what that was. That confused me. Definitely didn't see that coming. Sometimes they were just one-liners, or I
would come into the chat room, even if Carol was producing, I would come into the chat room because I wanted to watch her reaction to what you were talking about.
She was always I could feel her going, whoa, you could just feel her brain going, oh my God, she said what? And I was
I think I could feel
Carol.
her blushing.
It was really awesome.
It was totally awesome. It was so cool. You know, Milica, what is really fascinating to me is that what not fascinating, but what's such a gift, the chat room. So a lot of people don't know that our shows are live. We do live radio. So podcasting people cut and paste, and they might take out the blurbs and all sorts of things. Our shows are live, and we do not edit afterwards. And that's why we have this chat room where people can interact with us during our radio shows. Well, for a radio show like yours, where people sometimes are uncomfortable with the topic, the gift in this is they can come in with an anonymous name, and they can speak to you about things that they would otherwise be embarrassed about and not be, and feel totally safe and comfortable. So it really is a gift for your show in particular. At least that's what I believe.
Thanks, darling. I think it is too, because it's it is such a strange topic, and I don't often have a lot of callers calling in or anything, but I do get, I do get these amazing little messages after the fact, which is cool.
Right.
We've had some other producers on the show too that I want to give a shout out to. There was Rioa for a while, and Rhonda, who produced a lot of my shows. And she was amazingly supportive on the program. So I want to shout out them as well for their amazing contribution. I've already given 45 shouts out to Keisha, but I don't know if Keisha knows this. You actually had some fans in the chat room of my show, Keisha, who super missed you. So they're like, what happened to Keisha? Where'd she go? Keisha's around. Keisha's busy creating life. But yes, you had producer, as a producer, you actually had some fans of yours hey, is Keisha producing that? That was awesome. So yeah, there were some people who would specifically ask me before my show if you were producing, and they would come in to the chat room to play with you. So pretty freaking cute, because you were so great at keeping the masses entertained. So I want to thank you for that. It was really cool. So we're coming up to our third commercial break.
Okay,
time flies
before
when
we
you're
go to
celebrating. Yeah.
Before we go, and I'm going to mute after the commercial break, I just want to say thank you for all of the listeners, on behalf of all the listeners, on behalf of all the producers, on behalf of your fellow hosts and all of your guests. Thank you, Milica, for being you.
Thanks, darling. I'm so grateful, and I'm so grateful to be able to be on here. Just what a gift. Like, whether you get one listener and it changes their life, or you get thousands, and it's just so freaking awesome to know that our voices matter. And you've created a platform for that, so you rock.
Whoop, whoop. Thanks, sweetie.
So we're actually gonna head to our last commercial break of this awesome celebration of episode 200 here on the Pleasure Zone. So thank you so much for listening, and we will be back right after this commercial break.
Many of us have created a lot of limitations around sex and what we are willing to choose. What else is possible beyond what we have already seen, heard, or thought of? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual revolution? Taking the taboo out of all aspects of sex, sexuality, and copulation by tuning in to the Pleasure Zone radio show with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. You'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
What if you really do change molecules by your interaction with them? What if the change you've been looking for is right before your eyes? What if the uncomfortableness that comes with difference could be fun? What if the closed-minded people of the world no longer determined our world? What if gratitude trumps judgment every time? What if your kindness healed the world? What if the earth is asking for your help? And what if you had the resources to give it? This is your invitation to step into something that Einstein, Marie Curie, Picasso, Da Vinci, Shakespeare, Aristotle all knew to be true. Hi, my name is Dane here. 13 years ago, I started to truly ask questions. Actually, I started to be the question, and everything changed for me. What if there are no dumb questions, or any question too large? What if you being you are the gift and the change this world requires? Is now the time? For more questions to create a change in your world, sign up for a free video series at beingyouclass.com. My gift to you, beingyouclass.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, please call in the U.S. Call 815-880-8255. That's TALK. Or Canada 613-800-8736. Or you can Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email at milicajelenic.com. Now back to the program.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pleasure Zone. I'm your host, Milica Jelenic, and tonight we're celebrating 200 episodes of the Pleasure Zone. So tonight's number 200. There are some pretty amazing topics. You know, I actually sometimes forget, wow, I've talked a lot. Quite frankly, I think my husband's really happy that I talk on air for an hour a week. I think it's actually saved our marriage. So I don't talk his ear off and, he's like, oh my God, there she is talking again. I just talk on the air to all of you. And I'm like, oh, I get to be heard. Phew. And then it's like, oh, my husband's off in his own world and not listening to my show. Okay, cool. He actually doesn't listen to my show. He's listened to 2 episodes, I think. And I said, hey, how come you never listen to my show? He's like, I live with you. You tell me what the topics are. You give me the update. I don't need to listen to your show. I was like, oh, Mike. It's Mike. If you know Mike, you get it. So it's kind of funny, actually, living in a house with a lover who I often bring up on the show, who actually doesn't half the time know I'm talking about him. I've actually had his nephew on the show as well. Was one of my guests one day, which was pretty funny too. We talked about marvelous sex, superhero sex with my nephew, which was pretty funny. I think I mentioned that he was my nephew. And I had my mother on the show too, which was pretty amazing. At one point I actually looked at the statistics of how many people had listened to the episode with my mom. And right after I had done that episode with her, she'd had this revelation about receiving from the earth and including the earth and kind of like partying on with the earth. And I think it was in like December of, I don't know what year, I'll have to find that. But my mom was the guest, and it was freaking funny to me that it was at one point one of my best listened to episodes, December 29th, 2014. And
many of us have created a lot of limitations around sex and what we are willing to choose. What else is possible beyond what we have already seen, heard, or thought of? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual revolution, taking the taboo out of all aspects of sex, sexuality, and copulation by tuning in to the Pleasure Zone radio show with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. You'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you?
Hi, Milica, are you there?
I am. That was interesting. I think I got really excited and blew the lines. That's what happened.
Okay, go ahead, honey.
Okay, so as I was headed off there for a second, I was mentioning I did an episode with my mom, which was really sweet and awesome. And at one point, I actually considered having my dad on the show because my dad's a bit of a player, and I thought he could give us some insight, but quite frankly, then I kind of turned away from that idea because he also has a lot of judgment. So I wasn't sure how to bring my dad into the picture. But heck, if I could have my mom on, I could have my nephew on. I've never yet had my husband on, but I have had my daughter in the background of a few episodes that she wanted to contribute to her ideas but didn't want to speak. So there are sometimes you might actually, when you're listening to archives, hear my daughter giggling in the background, which was super cute. So I've had quite the ride, and I look forward to having an amazing ride to come. So I want to thank you guys because you have no idea what, unless you have a show, and some of you might, you might not realize what what kind of vulnerability it takes to be on the air, all the time and to discuss things. Basically, right now, it's like I'm talking to energies. I'm talking to everybody, and it's been quite an amazing practice for me. So I want to thank you guys for that. And I'll see you guys. I'm looking at my timeline, and I think our show is done, guys. I think we're almost at the end. So if we are, we're going to actually head off. But if we're not, I'm going to just keep talking until I get shut down, because right now I can't actually tell if my show's over or not, because you know what? On episode 200, you got to have something to show up with me.
Thank you for choosing to listen to The Pleasure Zone. Milica Jelenic will return next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.